Hi, and welcome to the Catalyst Sessions. Once again, my name is Bill DeYoung. The gentleman you see here is Tom White, the longtime owner, proprietor, grand poobah, and head honcho of Skipper's Smokehouse, which is about to leave us, or has left us, I guess, after 40 years in Tampa, actual institution. And there aren't that many of them left, and we just lost Skipper's. Hey, Tom, how are you?
Good. How are you, Bill?
I'm doing fine. I think what's on everybody's mind, certainly mine, is why now? Was it the pandemic? Why did you decide to get out of the Skipper's business?
Well, many reasons. Number one, 40 years is a long time, and I think pretty much enough, for someone to be in one business. I had, along the same lines, had a 24-year military career, which was kind of overlapped into my career at Skipper's, my two careers at Skipper's.
Yeah.
So while, when I first bought Skipper's Smokehouse back in 1980, September 23rd was the date, I was actually on a mission out in a big exercise out in Arizona, and with the Special Operations AC-130 gunship unit that I was a member of, that I stayed with until 1992 when they closed the base and retired our airplanes. And then I subsequently transferred down to, well, I was already here, but I transferred my assignment to US SOCOM and spent 5 years there as a tactics officer.
I didn't realize your military career overlap was with Skipper's.
Yeah, I've been in back in the Southeast Asian time frame, and I was in for 5 years, and then I got out for 5 years and wound up coming back to the United States after a little bit of time with a company called Bird Air that was like an Air America company flying in and out of Cambodia and Thailand. When Kissinger and Nixon wouldn't let the military couldn't go in there, so we were there on the last day in Saigon. So. But anyway, once that was over, I went to work for Bird Air for a few months and then wound up moving back to the United States at that time, and moving to Tampa.
Yeah, well, there's so many questions there, but I don't want to lose track of what I first said. Was like after 40 years, you got something pretty cool going there. Was the pandemic a factor in this?
The pandemic was absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, it was a factor. We just looked at it from many different angles. We tried to survive along with the PPP once we fought the banks for our PPP, once they got done paying the big boys. We're closed, obviously, like everybody else in March. And then were able to get through a really smaller bank over. I don't know if you're supposed to mention names or whatever, but anyway, they were very nice. First Citrus Bank, I'm going to say it anyway.
There you go.
They had our stuff in 24 hours, which was great because my employees were all hurting then. Our whole focus then was trying to get let everybody survive and put food on their table and keep the roofs over their heads and what have you. So. That was very important, and we struggled with all that with vendors and all the ASCAPs and BMI and CSAC people who wanted their money, the music licensing people. We fought everybody, and we're still fighting people that are still trying to get blood out of a turnip, for that. But once we got the PPP money, we opened up, we had the 8-week program going on initially, and so we opened up for we took the first week to do sanitation and what have you, and sanitize everything and get a system together to do al fresco dining. We were not going to open up inside at all. Right. So no bar, so we did everything outside. And we did that for about 5 weeks until a couple of employees were contact traced. They did not get sick. Nobody ever got sick there. Nobody ever caught the virus, thank God. But anyway, we had that, and a couple of other employees on the same day felt like they had symptoms, and so Cricket and I kind of decided, and the management staff decided that the risk was greater than the reward at that point. So we shut down again and told everybody to go get tested, and we would reopen at that once everybody was tested. Well, as you know, the testing process was a cluster, and they went, and by the time they got all tested and got cleared, the PPP was out. So we just felt like at 50%, even doing just al fresco stuff outside, that we really couldn't make it without the music and without all, because our, you know, there's a symbiotic relationship with our music and our food, obviously, for so many
Yes.
years.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So,
you know, yeah, after 40 years, I would imagine, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but I would imagine that the desire to hold on a little longer, because this will all go away, is a little thinner after 40. It's like, I don't know, this really sucks what we're going through right now. What am I going to
absolutely.
wait another 6 months, another year? So it was
Yeah.
easier to sort of say, let's let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, you know, we kept thinking and hoping it was going to get better, but it's not, and it hasn't. And even though every once in a while, you know, depending on testing, the rates, you know, the infection rate will go down, but we just didn't see it coming back until 2000. All of our major bands are, you know, postponed their shows into 2021, and even the ones that are early 2021 are now moving out into late 2021. So. You know, it just, I didn't want to get anybody sick. I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want the employees to get sick, and it just wasn't enough. You know, the nut was too big to really compensate, to really make it happen for us.
There's a lot of talk, you know, now, as there would be and will continue to be, about, well, that's the loss of another institution. You know, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, Skipper's fans were kind of inextricably sort of tied in with the Skipper's experience. I mean, a lot of people, that's their lifestyle. I mean, you must sort of feel something for those people too, like, hey man, I'm sorry, but this is the reality.
I absolutely do. It's and we've talked about it a lot. It's a way of life for people. And you know, every once in a while, you know, when I was out back at a show and somebody would come up to me and I was down and maybe things weren't going so well, or I had some bumps in the road or whatever. And somebody would come up to me and they go, Tom, I just wanted to tell you that I would not be living in Tampa if it wasn't for Skipper Smokehouse. And I have brought you know, I came here to interview for a job. I stumbled into here and I said, oh my God, you know, I moved here because of you guys. And now, you know, there's like 3 generations of that family here or whatever. So you know, and not to mention our staff. I mean, Vicky Dodds has been with me for 40 years from the beginning.
Wow.
And most of our bartenders are 20-year plus, you know, alumni, you know, or veterans. So everybody's really, you know, disappointed but understanding that, you know, it's time for me to kind of do my thing, you know. Now, just our whole focus in this thing too now, the thrust now is to get somebody involved very rapidly to take over and keep that vibe alive and keep that whole thing going on. And I think, you know, we've had just a great outpouring of people calling and texting and emailing, wanting Skipper Smokehouse, wanting to keep it going. So we kind of thought that would happen, but I just, you know, I was, you know, I haven't even read the Facebook posts or anything yet because it was too emotional for me all week. You know, it was 5 days of, you know, a different crowd every day was, you know, that's why we did that and kept it socially distanced and safe for everybody. But I'm going to wait till I head south to the Keys next week to probably read all those and start and respond to everybody, you know.
Is that your desire, that somebody will buy it and maybe not keep the name, but certainly keep the sort of lifestyle and brand going? You know, that somebody would keep it going. I mean, it would bother you, I would imagine, that if somebody raised it, you know, Pave Paradise and put up a parking lot, right? If somebody just knocked it down for something, you'd like it to keep going, in other words.
We want the brand to survive, Bill. We're very weeding out people who don't have that thought process going on. And if you're a business person and you're buying a viable business, then you are not very smart if you come in there and you rebrand when you've got 40 years of reputation internationally, nationally, food and music. And so that's, I think for the most part, everybody that we've talked to, from a couple of them who are now at the bottom of the stack, who do want to do something else with it.
Yeah,
that's not the value there, and that's not I feel like a responsibility to all those generations of people that have come there, and all the regulars are, they're after me. When are we going to open up? Man, we want to come back for our happy hour every day, that kind of thing, So I get beat up every time I go in there from those guys, and girls and what have you. But so
let me turn the clock back a little bit. Back in 1980, you're in the Air Force. How and why did you buy a restaurant in Tampa, Florida? How did all that happen?
Well, as I said, when I came back from overseas, from Southeast Asia, I grew up in Miami in South Florida. My dad was a firefighter there. He was a cook for the fire department, actually, so it was kind of what got my cooking chops going on. And as a kid, we fished all the time. I mean, he would take us at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, dump us off in the pier. We couldn't afford a boat back then, so he'd dump us off in the pier. And back then, the fishing was great off the piers in Miami. It's a little bit polluted out there now, but you could just load up a croaker sack full of mackerel and kingfish and whatever, you
ever sat and talked with Jeff Klinkenberg about those days? Because that's the way he grew up, too.
No.
Jeff, he's a writer and fishing in Miami as a kid. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, I'm sorry.
So I came to Miami for just for a brief period, and then it's a weird connection. You'll never even understand it. But anyway, I was brought back a bunch of Cambodian temple rubbings and things from when I was over there, and that I was buying, and soapstone and different things. So I went around. I looked for some Asian places around Miami to go sell that stuff that I had shipped back, and I went into this place called Pachinko House. And pachinko is a Japanese pinball machine. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah.
But they're like clink, clink, clink. They got little balls that go down.
Small thing. Right?
Yeah, they're small. They're small. So I went into this place, and as luck would have it, it was run by an ex-Air Force pilot that was a C-121 driver. And, and me being a C-130 guy, so we hit it off. And then he goes, well, I'd like to expand up to the West Coast. And I go, I don't want to go to the West Coast of Florida. I'm an East Coast guy, so I was really against it. But I said, well, I didn't have a job, so I said, well, okay, let me go up and look. So as it turns out, I came up here, moved up to Tampa, opened up a pachinko house on Kennedy Boulevard. We were sold pachinko machines and the green eggs. Nobody was selling green eggs then. So we sold pachinko machines, the green eggs, and backgammon games. Weird combo, I know. But that's what we did. So I opened up that, and while I was in the service, I met these two guys in Alaska. Had a couple tours overseas and a tour in between in Alaska, flying C-130 ski models, resupplying all the DuLine sites in Greenland and Alaska and what have you. So I met these two guys, and we became fast friends, and they were my partners. Became my partner. I brought them in from Arizona to run Pachinko House for me. So
I gotta inject and say that Pachinko House. Man, that sounds like a front. Yeah, I'll go over to the Pachinko House. What's in the back room? Anyway, please. So you brought these guys to partner.
Yeah. So they came in and they worked for me. They were, so I had one of them run a place in St. Pete, one of them, and I had another guy in Orlando, and one in Tampa, and then so while I was doing that, I was not in the Air Force at that point. The Air Force Reserves came courting, and they were looking for navigators that could train to become an electronic warfare guy in the gunship. So in the AC-130 gunship. So I wound up kind of signing up with them, and at the same time, I got hired by a local security company, and I was a private investigator for them and ran their security agency, a guy named Sam Ferrara. And so it's very convoluted, I know.
Wow, I didn't see that coming. No.
Yeah, I know. So I closed the pachinko business because the guy was embezzling funds from me, my partner. And so I closed that and went to work as the PI and got into reserves at the same time. And so when I wasn't flying the reserves, I was doing PI work, and I worked for some pretty big Barry Cohen, and did the big arson conspiracy that happened back in the late 70s here in Tampa. Worked that and a whole bunch of other things, and then the way I found Skippers, believe it or not, was Sam Ferrara, my boss, and I were driving around following somebody up in North Tampa, and this little corner seafood shack was there with a seafood market, and we went in there and had a sandwich, and And so when I was when my partners and I started looking for a place, I said, I want to buy a place kind of like that Skipper Smokehouse place,
That's what it was called.
Yeah, it was called that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a little, well, now it's a big dive, but it was a little dive, and it was a little teeny place, and with the market on the corner. So
dive.
I said, I called the broker and I said, hey, I want a place like that. So she went and knocked on the door and asked if they wanted to sell, and they said, yeah. And so we bought it, back in 1980.
Was there live music there when it was just a little fish shack?
Yeah, there was a couple of hippies out back just playing plunka plunka. There was no, just sitting on a 55-gallon drum, and they had like just a beer license, a draft beer license was all they were selling was Bud Draft, back then, and there was no wine, no alcohol, no nothing, So it was kind of wild and woolly west back then up in that area. There was either you're a hippie or you're a biker, So
yeah.
And the outlaws. So when we bought it, the owners moved on, and then the biker, we started expanding the music a little bit, and the bikers started coming out. So we had a little bit of an issue with the outlaws for a brief period of time, but then that kind of cleared up. But,
1980, it was right before, I'm born and raised in St. Pete. It was right before I went off to college in Gainesville. So I'm trying to remember, what was the live music situation here in 1980?
Well,
where would one go to hear, jam bands? And nobody was playing reggae or anything like that.
No, that's a funny story that I have. There was only one place, I think, or maybe in St. Pete, the Watership Down, I think it might have been called back in those days, that did reggae. And so I think Silas Dents might have done a little bit over there on the beach. But when we started doing reggae, nobody in Tampa was doing it for sure. And nobody was selling Red Stripe. We wound up, when I was up in Fort Walton Beach, because I flew out of Duke Field up there, when I was up there one day and one afternoon, I was down at a bar downtown, and I was, had a bunch of import beers. Like, oh, that one Red Stripe. Let me try that Jamaican beer, So I tried it, and I go, when I go home, I'm gonna find out, what, who sells that. And so at that point,
I love Red Stripe. So you're responsible. That was you.
Yeah. They were selling a half a dozen cases in 2 counties when I started selling it.
Yeah.
At the end of our reggae heyday, which in the early 90s, we were selling 100 cases a week of just Red Stripe, just Red Stripe. So, with it, we put the reggae, and we just did a lot of USF folks coming in back then, and so we kind of, put Desno Geddes, the brewer, used to send us to Jamaica for free all the time because they loved us. We made them.
Hey, I know a lot of guys with stories going to Jamaica for free in those days, but they're different kind of stories.
Yeah, I know.
But so, I mean, did you start out like the idea, I'm going to create this kind of vibe, or did it just sort of happen?
It morphed.
Yeah.
We kind of thought we'd get in there and do it for 5 years and build it up and sell it. That was been a funny story. That was just a little 5-year plan that we were on. Well, that 5-year turned into 8 5-year plans, and so the music thing was, my partners, one of them was from St. Louis. He passed away a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And Vince, my other partner, is still here in town, but none of them, they had no fish business. They had no, other than going to concerts. They'd never booked anything. I was a social chairman in my fraternity at Florida State.
Mm-hmm. I caught it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that was kind of the natural thing for me to take over that, that whole part of the business, and they work more operations and advertising and marketing and stuff like that. So, so it gets kind of, we went from a free Sunday jam situation to where we were freaking out about charging $1 when we really had to start paying the bands, because the bands back then would work for 3 free beers. That was their pay. Each person got 3 beers. And there were little 10-ounce, Budweiser drafts, and that was their pay for the day.
Times have changed.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they have. Absolutely.
Well, are you a Deadhead? I mean, is that where it came from with you? I mean, that to me is the origin of all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I could be generalizing, and if I am, I'm apologizing. But I wondered that about you, if that's where it came from.
I was, in all honesty, I was not. My partner was.
Yeah.
Vince was the Grateful Dead guy. I mean, his whole house is kind of decorated in Grateful Dead memorabilia and stuff like that. And so he was that guy. And so he kind of got me. I was a kind of a rock and roll guy and got more involved in the reggae side of the house. I liked all the world beat stuff and the African stuff. And he was like, the Grateful Dead thing came when we moved our Sunday. We're doing reggae on Sundays for a while, once a month, and then we were going every. And we decided, well, you know what? Let's move it to the middle of the week and do like a Wednesday reggae hump day kind of a thing, And that just went crazy. And that was took a day when we weren't doing any business at all, hardly, and made something out of it. And then we started doing the Grateful Dead stuff a few years later, and we said, let's make Thursday our Grateful Dead night. And so we went through a couple of bands until we settled on Uncle John's, who's now done, 1,100 shows there.
Yeah, that's legend. Yeah.
It's incredible. It was incredible. So we had our Wednesday, Thursday, midweek stuff. And then we had the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to do all of our touring bands. And so, or if somebody wanted to do something on Tuesday, we could get them cheap. It would kind of a connect the dots date, that kind of a thing. Wednesday and Thursday have been this legendary for us. They've been our, paid the bills pretty much over the years.
So what happens with the touring acts and the national acts? I mean, after a certain point, as your reputation starts to grow, do the booking agents start calling you and saying, look, I've got acoustic hot tuna in Florida in 2 months. Do you want them?
They always did. Yeah, they always did. Once we got on the map, and because there wasn't, back in those early days, there was nothing but Janice Landing and I think, a couple places in Ybor City. It wasn't, maybe it was the Ritz back. No, it wasn't the Ritz.
Masquerade.
Frankie's Patio was down there. They came after us though. A couple of places in Ybor that was the Orpheum maybe that we competed a little bit with, but they did a different kind of music pretty much.
Yeah.
So we were emulated a lot by people, which was kind of irritated me at the point, but it's okay. It provided some competition and what have you. And so, so I more paid attention to those genres of music, and we gradually, and then we kind of morphed into the blues thing, and the blues was, the blues is kind of where it all started, a lot of it, even British blues and the John Mayalls and all that. And Buddy Guy used to come out there and play a couple of sets, and never take a break, and walk around.
That's also legend. Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, he had a chord. He had a little guy, a shoeshine guy that traveled with him and had his 200-foot guitar cord and followed him around the Skipperdome. He'd go into bathrooms and play and go into the dining room. And again, the guy would follow him with his cord and come back out, and follow him and wrap the cord back up. And those things like that were just priceless, I was one day, and another fellow that was really near and dear to our hearts was John Mayall. I grew up listening to John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, so, John would always, he was one of those guys, he didn't want managers to deal with any of his business. So he would call me, hey, Tom, and he's like, he lived in California. He said, I'm coming in at such and such a time, and, can you pick me up? And I go, yeah, sure. So I'd go to the airport in my little Mazda 626 back then and pick up John Mayall and have him in my car, my seat next to me, and his guitar in the back and keyboard back there. And I'm going, holy crap, I've arrived. I got John Mayall sitting next to me in my seat. We're going up to the hotel,
You got favorite shows from the past, or favorite moments like that you would share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I had forgotten totally the other night. And Roy Buchanan, just while we were talking about blues, Roy Buchanan was one of the all-time great. He's had some of the all-time great shows there. Mm-hmm. And he's not with us any longer.
Yeah, Miss Roy
either. Yeah. But those shows were just off the charts. I mean, packed, and just somebody that gets invited to join the Stones and refuses, because of his, he just wanted to do his thing, So Roy, and the African side, Alpha Blondie was something that one of my reggae friends the other night reminded me. I had a list of about 100 reggae bands that I was, talking about on stage, and then my friend Bruce said, "Hey, what about Alpha Blondie?" Alpha Blondie came in back in those days, and it was the first show there. It was 20 degrees out, and we had probably maybe 50 people there. Alpha Blondie was an international African star, international, just wonderful. And but that was again one of those best shows ever. There was a night with Lonnie Mack, the Flying V guy who kind of made the Flying V what it is, and Tinsley Ellis on our stage, doing guitar riffs back and forth.
Oh, Tinsley, man, I haven't thought about Tinsley in years. He's cool.
Yeah. Tinsley's still touring. He's up in Atlanta.
He used to play Gainesville all the time. Where the University of Florida is, Tom.
Yeah, is that what it is? I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But Tinsley and Lonnie, I just remember seeing, because Lonnie was insane, and I remember seeing Lonnie's, guitar player. I saw Tinsley's eyes open up, and I saw him say, please no, because Lonnie was making him go crazy. And Lonnie actually coined the phrase, the club that washed ashore, that we've had on a lot of our media over the years, so those are good. Buckwheat Zydeco's shows were legendary in the Zydeco area. Dr. Ralph Stanley, wow, nobody does bluegrass like that guy, you know what I mean? And so again, a lot of these folks are no longer with us, but just so proud and happy to have them on our stage. But we've grown a lot of people here.
Speaking of live music, who's your average customer? I mean, talk to me about Skipper's regular. We're not talking about the restaurant particularly, which is kind of the same, and kind of the oyster bar, kind of not the same. But let's talk about live music. People who come and have a couple beers and just like dig the music.
Our listeners are discriminating listeners. So they are people. We're a destination place. We're not in Ybor City where you walk down the street and you hear something, you go, oh, let's go listen to that. People come there because if they want to come for the music, they're coming for the music. Now we try to get people from the dining room out there too, but there's two separate things going on, and it overlaps. But the average, the listeners are based on the bands that we have, which change dramatically all the time. Even though we were voted the best international blues club, back in the early 2000s, we're not a pure blues club. But
that's one of the things that's always been cool about it, is that it was different all the time.
It's culture. You can really get your culture on there. Really.
Yeah.
And so our average person, I mean, it could. They know what they're coming to hear, and a lot of these guys, for the old more retro acts, they come out with their discs and they want them signed, their old albums and stuff, and 99% of the artists that come there that play for us will go out and commune with their peeps, and go out there and sign stuff, and so cool. There's not really an age demo, to be honest with you. We do the jam bands and stuff. We get younger people in, and the older rock stuff will bring Canned Heat, or the Spirit used to play there, and all the old rock bands. They bring out a lot of the old rockers. But we get great support from WMNF. That's been our music partner in this whole long, strange, wonderful trip that we've been on, but they've been just fabulous, and we've all worked together, and we raised a lot of money for them, and we've given them a lot, and vice versa.
I did want to mention that you've been involved in a lot of charity work, and something else that you've become kind of famous for and stuff. So Skipper's has been like a really integral part of the community for a long time, and you give back to the community. It's not just sort of that old hippie club on the corner, Tom, you're giving it all up. Are you literally going to go fishing? I think that's what Cricket said.
I am going to go fishing. I've got a little place down in the Keys that I have not spent much time at in the last, ever since I bought it in 2016. And so, the Cricket and I bought it. And so I'm going to go down at the end of this week and kind of go down and clear my head a little bit, and while we're entertaining, offers and what have you on Skippers, and getting the right people in there. But yeah, I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Florida. I grew up diving and fishing my whole life. And so that's, going over the overseas highway down there, and it just, I don't know. It's like a big, huge weight's lifted off your shoulders when you do that,
Yeah. Well, but you're still gonna maintain a residence here, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope to be involved in Skippers too going forward, so, as I said, people will hopefully they'll, continue the brand, and you'd be silly not to, for sure, to keep people coming back. I mean, not to mention the whole Travel Channel thing with Adam Richmond, we had all that, the food stuff with the blackened grouper Reuben and the alligator Reuben. We still got people coming in from China and all over the place. Those reruns are awesome. They're bringing people in from Europe and all over the world, come to have that sandwich or whatever. So I'm sure the new owners will keep the blackened grouper Reuben and the alligator ribs going on.
I mean, when we talk about the brand, we're just about out of time, but I want to kind of repeat this one. I mean, when we talk about the brand, would it behoove them to keep the name and keep the logo?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
but that's not an absolute condition of selling.
No, I'm going to let Cricket work on that, all of that stuff. But we strongly suggest it, and people would be. I don't think it would be smart not to do that. I mean, this with 40 years of reputation, and he comes in and you go, Joe Bongo's, Smokehouse or whatever. Who knows what that is? You know what I mean? But they do know what Skipper Smokehouse is.
Hey man, I'm not going near a place called Joe Bongo's. Hey, Tom White, we are out of time. Thanks so much, man. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
Bill, I appreciate it.
We wish you all the best, and we will see you again, I know.
I'll be here. I'll be around. No problem. No problem.
Brother. See ya.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Peace.